Oh, hi there.
Oh, hi. Wait a minute.
I've heard in the comments a lot. How do I know if LEM or DASA is better for me? How do I pick LEM or DASA? Because there's a lot of people that get into LEM and don't understand the system, don't take time to learn it, and they're not very happy with it.
Oh, yes! I hate this! It is revolting!
And I understand, it's a different sort of trigger system. People either grow up with striker fired or double action, single action in some form or fashion. Or single action only, honestly. When looking at HKs, the question comes up, do I want the LEM or do I want the DASA? More people are probably going to be better served with the DASA, and there's a couple of criteria that I'm going to throw your way for making your decision. First, are you a trigger slapper? Now, a trigger slapper, there's a lot of them out there. Some of them are professional shooters and some of them aren't. But what they do is, in between each shot, they break contact with the trigger and re-engage contact all the way out from reset. So you fire the gun, it cycles, you come off, and then you engage it again. And some people will argue for consistency that way or anything like that. I don't like breaking contact with the trigger, but if you do that with an LEM, it'll be like this. So a lot of guys don't like that. And I understand, because who wants to do this every single time? It's not a double action only, so why bother? What benefit do you get from this? So the reset is actually exactly where the DASA is, sometimes shorter, based on who installed your trigger, but you can break it right away after the reset, which is great, or you can come right off it and then go through that long ass pull again, which quite frankly is not too bad, but that's how some people use it, and they get really upset and fed up with it, and they're like, I don't like this system, it's slower. And honestly, the fastest I've ever shot a hammer gun was this one. But that's the first concern, is, are you a trigger slapper? If you're a trigger slapper, DASA is going to benefit you, because what you lose in the reset is so much less. It's that right there versus that whole take up and reset in the LEM. Next, what are you using it for? I'm gonna go through a couple scenarios with you. In my mind, there's 4. Home defense, concealed carry, and then professional application, which is law enforcement and military. In my mind, the LEM checks 3 out of the 4 boxes, which is home defense, concealed carry, and law enforcement, be it in duty status or plain clothes. Based on where you are though, I'll get into that in a second. The double action, single action is the gun that I'm taking everywhere. This is namely for 2 reasons. One, there's not a lot of pressure keeping this where it's at, and I always carry condition 1 or with a round in the chamber. If you're not carrying with a round in the chamber, figure out what kind of casket you want. But the hammer can get pulled away, and you can get a lot of debris in between the hammer and the firing pin, which is not very good. Also, the light LEM, which is the LEM I prefer, doesn't have a lot of force when you're pulling the trigger. So because the hammer spring's preloaded, it's, giving you that beautiful break weight, but at the same time, it's not doing what it needs to do if it's a harsh environment. Now, you do have second strike capability, and it is going to be a lot heavier than this, but it's going to be tough. And the light LEMs and torture tests have not done the best. There's a lot of old torture tests on YouTube. You'd have to dig them up. They're old as hell. But all the LEM guns, except for the one P30 video that HK did, and I think they used the medium LEM for that. But light LEM is really not good for that. Whereas the double action, single action takes a lot of force and deliberate force to cock that hammer. Even if it's at half cock, so let's say you've loaded it and you decock it, this is still going to take a lot more force than the light LEM. And your first shot's going to be double action. If you cock the hammer, it's going to be the same as the light LEM. So if you're smacking it to single action before you press a shot versus pulling through the double action, then you're going to run into that. So I think the weight of the standard V1, which is double action, single action, safety decocker, is going to work better in adverse conditions versus the light LEM V7. But why this is good for home defense, concealed carry, and law enforcement is twofold. One, the trigger is really, really good, so your shots are going to be very precise, and you're not really going to get that harassment about a race gun trigger. But once you master the LEM and the flow of the LEM, it's very, very easy to break the shot, follow through the cycle of operations, back on target, and press another shot. Very, very fast trigger if you need it to be, or a very light and precise trigger. I really do like the LEM system, honestly. So in a home defense scenario or concealed carry scenario, it's great because you come out, you don't have any controls to touch, nothing. You're loaded, you draw it, you press the trigger, and then, you know, you do what you gotta do, let off, and then the hammer follows forward anyway. So you're not sitting there like this, it's like this, and you can reholster safely, put the gun away safely, and you won't have any sort of issues. You can immediately thumb over, hammer, holster. Whereas, you know, this, you do your engagement and you come off and you could forget. I'm not saying you will, I usually don't. It's up to the user and how much stress they've had in real life, but this could happen, and then it's a really light break. So if you're a super safety guy or you forget steps a lot or anything like that, you're not necessarily going to remember to put it on safe or decock it. But for most people, it's not going to be an issue, but it is an issue based on individual skill level, so that's why. But outside of that, it's really up to you what you want to use it for. But if you want to have a one trigger fits all approach as an HK user, I would recommend, you know, standard double action, single action, safety decocker. It gives you the most standardized manual of arms and controls versus the LEM. But the LEM is by far and away the best concealed carry option in my mind, and for home defense. Law enforcement can use them too. They do have a place there. However, the caveat I mentioned earlier, if you're law enforcement in, say, Arizona or New Mexico or parts of Texas or even Mississippi, Florida, places where you're possibly going to get really dirty, really wet, really muddy, or really sandy, this may not be the best option for you. This might be better. I will say that all four of my HK45s have performed well in my shooting conditions, which is wet, fine sand, and gross humidity with heat. So I've never had any issues. I've never had any stoppages. The only thing I can ever report having an issue with was ammo related, because I had a squib. It wasn't even me shooting it, it was my buddy shooting it, but we had a squib. I'm not going to count that against the gun. So I've never had a problem with an HK45, and I'm very, very happy to report that if you want to use it in pretty much any circumstance, one of these will do just fine. That extends to the USP series and the P30 series and even the P2000s from what I've seen. So if you're still trying to decide after this video, if you are honest to God a trigger slapper, stay away from the LEM. It's not for you. If you're constantly in adverse conditions, stay away from the LEM. It's not for you. And if you're not going to take time to learn the trigger system, stay away from LEM. It's not for you. It can be, but it may not be. So I'm not saying you're you're not good enough, don't buy it. But what I'm saying is, if you're not willing to accept those factors and you're not willing to work with the trigger, you're just going to be wasting time and ammunition. So think about that, and be honest with yourself, and you'll be happy with the product that you get. And as I close out, this trigger is much smoother. So if you want the smoothest possible shooting experience, get the LEM, and then if you have a USP, you can even do the match hybrid LEM, and that thing's hyper smooth. But I hear people have some issues with that as far as reliability and primers sometimes. Light LEM, good to go. Thanks for watching. Take care out there.